folks. You're listening to the Jobs Podcast. I am your host, Tim Hendricks. Your time is valuable. I'm not going to waste it. Let's get right to the interview.
Today we have Ray. Ray is a builder, a real estate agent. He's got some masonry experience, but his specialty is insulated concrete forms. So today we're going to learn all about how to build a super efficient, storm-safe, and insulated house. And I happen to have one of those, so I have a personal interest in this. But Ray, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Tim. How are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.
You bet. So let's just go ahead and start. Tell me where you were born and give me kind of a brief little history about the origins of Ray.
I'm a Texan by heart. Was born in 1976, so I'm older than dirt. But we lived there for about 9 years, moved to Louisiana for a couple of years, and then moved up here to the great state of Missouri, in 1987, and been here ever since. So,
right on. So
not too bad. Dad was always kind of an entrepreneur. He had a pipe and sewer pipe company in Texas, and he had some friends that were bricklayers, and they came up here to Missouri, and they said, "Hey, if you'll come up here and open up a supply company, we'll give you business." So he's like, "Okay," and so we moved up here, and that's where the masonry experience came from.
Yeah. So is brick and sand and mortar and just all that kind of stuff, that's what you dealt with?
Right. Everything it takes to brick a house and put in a real masonry fireplace, except for the brick. So we were all into the accessory stuff. And we did that for, about 25, 26 years.
Is that where you started, just working in the warehouse or something, or?
Yep. In summertime, whenever school was out, I was always riding in the middle between my dad and my brother and lamenting all the slug bugs that were on the road at the time.
And I bet you got some good workouts delivering that stuff all the time.
Yeah. I was pretty much a beanpole, so it was a good experience.
Right on. So did you do that all through high school, and then did you go to college, or did you go right into just working for your dad, or?
I went right into working for him. There wasn't really a need for college at that point because, the career was already kind of set up.
Right.
But there were things that came up along the way that I went back to school and got, working on my associate's degree with things that would help out the business. So as cash would allow, I wasn't one for student loans. So I just kind of paid as I went, and when the money ran out, I quit going.
Was this like a business classes, or?
No, I actually just picked out an associate's degree schedule from OTT, and no, I'm sorry, it was University of Phoenix, because it would allow me to do some online, and so that's kind of what I did there.
The online stuff is really convenient because, especially for people that are working professionals like yourself, you don't have the time to go and sit in a class all day long, or if you have a family, you don't want to go spend the evening sitting in class until 9 or 10 o'clock at night after working all day.
Yeah, exactly. And your classes are typically 3-hour classes. So I didn't have time for that crap.
Sure.
So the University of Phoenix thing was cool because it was one class at a time. They were 5 weeks at a time, and you met once a week.
Oh, okay.
And so that really made it nice to be able to concentrate, do most of it online, and stay out of the classroom all the time.
I don't know much about the online setup. I mean, I know that it's convenient. Are you doing a live classroom where the teacher is lecturing, or is it mostly just the presentation is done, or you get together and it's a Q&A by typing questions, or how does that typically go, or does it depend on the class?
With them, it was once a week you would meet and they would lecture for 3 hours. But other than that, it was just like, hey, here's your homework, get in your groups, get it done, bring it back to, you turn in a lot of your stuff online. But then there was a group project at the end, but the classes were only 5 weeks long. So it was very compact and concise and to the point. And that was nice because if you didn't like the class, it only lasted 5 weeks, then you were done and moved on.
Sure. Well, and one at a time, that's a digestible bite as far as your education goes. So
yeah, because most of them are 3 classes at a time.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, in conventional college.
So you went through that process, and how long did you do after you took over for your dad or started working for your dad? after high school. How long did you do that before you shifted gears and moved into the insulated concrete form side of things?
In, let's see, I graduated in 95. We picked up gas fireplaces and started putting those in. So I did all the sales and install and service work for those, because masonry fireplaces were expensive and everybody was going, zero clearance or gas fireplace.
Yeah.
So we did that for a little bit, and then we spun that off because everybody started getting into it. So we spun that off and sold that division of the company. And I guess it was about 2003, 2004, we decided that it's like, okay, we only have masonry again. So what else are we going to do? And so we did some research and kind of looked at the money problems of, when people quit paying their bills because they're spending way too much money on, cabinets and countertops and
Mhm.
bathtubs and that kind of thing. And landed on insulated concrete forms just because it was more than aesthetics. Um, and it was kind of at the front of the build, so it helped out.
That's good. The insulated concrete forms, now I know about those, but for the people listening, what is it that separates an insulated concrete form structure from your typical just residential build or, your 3 bedroom, 2 bath type home?
Sure. In layman's terms, you can do whatever you want with them. You can build whatever structure you want. But basically, it's a hollow styrofoam Lego block that you stack on top of each other to build a structure, and then you fill the hollow middle with concrete. So you have, when you're done, you have a solid concrete, steel reinforced, super insulated structure that's fire resistant, storm resistant, super energy efficient.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty much
So,
like living in a Yeti cooler.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think I mentioned it early on. I live in an ICF house, and I've I've just been fascinated by them because the ones that we have, we're all electric. We have 1,600 square feet, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and our highest electric bill is about $180 a month. And that's
Right.
pretty darn good when you figure that
Yeah.
that's the worst we're going to get. Usually we're floating around the 125 a month for our hot water, for our HVAC, for everything. And
Sure.
if you factor out the silly fees that the electric company likes to throw in there, we're under $100 a month for our electric bill for a family of four. I
Yeah.
consider that to be a win. So,
Yeah, 1,600 square foot. I mean, in a stick frame house, I mean, you're double that.
right,
So, yeah.
right. One of the, it's not a drawback necessarily, but it's an observation that I made. We've been in this house about 5 years, and I noticed they're extremely quiet inside.
Hmm.
But there are times when there'll be somebody pulled up outside and I don't know they're there because I can't hear the door shut. I can't hear the car running. And so the UPS guy will be standing out there trying to find if somebody's home or not. And I'm just blissfully sitting in my recliner, unaware that there's somebody out there. But they're so quiet inside. That's another real nice benefit. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, a couple quick little stories on that one. One of the ones that we built was for an older lady, and her there was a microburst storm that came through Springfield, Missouri, and she lived out all about 10 miles east of there. And she went out on her front porch the next morning, and all of her patio furniture was gone. And she couldn't figure out what was going on. And she had kind of a wraparound porch.
mhm,
And she finally found all of her patio furniture was all jammed into one corner of the porch, all, like crammed together in a corner.
mhm.
And she didn't even know it rained.
Oh my goodness.
And yet we had buildings that were stick frame and whatever that were being blown down that night, and we had it was between 70 and 80 mile an hour wind, and she had no clue. So, and
Wow.
unfortunately, like what you're talking about, that same lady, she saw taillights leaving her. She kind of lived out in the country, so she saw taillights leaving her driveway slash road one day, and it was a truck and had a big trailer and had several round bales of hay on the back of it. And apparently this dude had driven up with his big flatbed truck and trailer and tractor and had loaded up several of her round bales and decided that they were his,
Oh,
and
brother.
left, and she didn't even know he was there. So
Yeah.
Thankfully, at this point in time, they created Nest cams and everybody's got
Sure.
doorbell cameras and all that stuff.
Right.
It's really
Right.
nice, but yeah, that's one of those things. There's all hell can be breaking loose outside, and you're really not going to know it inside. So
Blissfully unaware.
yeah, yep. In
What
that
is
case,
the,
ignorance is bliss.
yeah. What is the typical now the brand that I have and the brand that you utilize, there's multiple different brands of ICFs out there. What
Hmm.
what is there an industry standard as far as the one that most people build their typical residential homes with will provide how many miles per hour of wind resistance or storm resistance?
Sure. When you're doing research on ICF, the everything that you read on all of the pamphlets, all the advertising materials is all based off of 6-inch concrete core ICF.
Hmm.
And so stick frame will withstand about 120 mile an hour wind. If you have the trusses tied down, the ICF is 250 mile an hour.
Okay.
Just to put that into perspective, Hurricane Katrina was 187 miles an hour at her peak
Man.
whenever she made landfall there in Louisiana. So, and we know how much devastation that did.
Sure.
Um, there's also it has a 3.5 hour fire rating with 1/2 inch sheetrock, and it gets real close to 4 hours with 5/8 inch sheetrock.
Hmm.
Wood is 20 minutes. So that's,
That's
I'm
a
not saying to break
drastic.
out some popcorn and start a Netflix movie, but
Right.
you got a little more time there to get your family out, and of course the walls aren't going to burn, so
Right.
you've got your floor and your roof to deal with, but it's a lot less liability for the insurance company too. So
Hmm.
we see a pretty significant drop in our homeowners insurance policies for our clients.
Oh, okay. What do you where did ICF start? Is that something that you mentioned Hurricane Katrina? Is that something that it's commonly used down in Florida, for example, the Gulf Coast, or where they deal with hurricanes on a regular basis?
Truthfully, what happened was they invented it in Europe in 1942. There's a lot of Europe that is higher in the atmosphere, not atmosphere, sorry, higher longitude,
Hmm.
latitude, higher latitude than we are, and so it's a lot colder. And so it was invented in Europe, and then it was something that we adopted back in the 70s. It started going into commercial buildings, and then the 80s went into residential. And of course, like you said, it started, Florida, Canada, California, where you've got, really cold hurricanes, earthquakes, and we're the Midwest. So everything takes about 20 years to trickle down here.
Sure.
And so it's been here for I don't know, about 30, 35 years, something like that. But it's just still kind of the new kid on the block when you consider that stick frame construction's been going on for, hundreds of years.
Right. Well, I hadn't even dawned on me the earthquake part of things. If you have a concrete structure like that, I think that would probably do well when the earth is moving underneath you. So
That's it. Yep.
yeah. So you've been selling and building and just involved with ICF construction since what did you say, 2000 and what?
2003, 2004 is when we picked up ICF.
Okay. And how have you seen the industry move in that regard?
We grow every year, so it's something that we see an increase in with, especially with energy cost. People understand that your homeowner's insurance usually goes up every year,
Mhm.
especially with the more natural disasters we have across the country. They take that out on everybody because it's a group pool. It's kind of like group health insurance.
Yeah.
We kind of get to pay for everybody as a blanket thing, and which is good. That's what evens everybody out, but it still increases those that that didn't necessarily have a claim.
Yeah.
And so we see some increases there. Utility bills continue to go up, and energy costs continue to rise, and so we see a lot of that as well as a result of. And we have a lot of people that are wanting a little more off the grid now, something that consumes less energy, so that if at some point in time fossil fuels do reach a point where we have to do something else, then those alternatives are less because their house requires less. And so they'd be a lot more apt to move to something alternative, and it'd be an easier move
That's
because
one of
of,
the
of
things that
other
kind of
requirements.
attracted me is that if my house is extremely efficient to begin with, then I would like to get solar at some point just for
Yeah.
the self-independence aspect of it. And if my home doesn't, I just wouldn't need as big of a solar array in theory, because my
Right.
house is a lot more efficient. And so, and with solar, the prices have come way down, but there's still a system for your home to be, 90, 100% of your usage. It's still pretty expensive. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Typically, what I see is somewhere around $50,000 for a
phew,
typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath solar system.
right. And in some parts of the country, in California, for example, where their electric rates are through the roof, solar actually makes a lot of sense. And then they have state rebates and things like that too. But
Mm. Texas is very much the same way. Their rates aren't as expensive, but they have tons of rebates. State rebates are just kind of out the wazoo over there.
hmm,
And here in the Midwest, I mean, we every now and then we can get a hold of some federal stuff, but other than that, if you can't get a hold of a farm type grant or
yeah,
whatever, then you're just kind of hung out there. Good luck.
right.
So it makes it difficult sometimes.
Now the ICF, you said it's a foam block, as I know,
Yep.
and you put concrete in the middle. Is that, if you're building that, I would think it would be easier to just carry foam blocks around the job site than it would be to be lugging around 12 or 16 foot 2x6s, 2x12s, whatever dimensional lumber you're using.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it goes together faster too. So it's a real nice process as far as that goes. I'm not like I said, I was born in '76. I'll be 48 here in just a couple weeks, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore.
Mm,
But carrying foam around is a lot more attractive to me than hauling 2x6s and zip board and OSB and all that
yeah.
stuff. It's a little overrated at my age.
Do you find that assembling it, you said they go together, they're essentially just like Lego blocks, for lack of a better term. Um,
Yep,
the
yep, that's exactly right.
what's the I mean, if you have someone, let's use my house again as an example, 1600 square feet. I know that every house build is different depending on the complexity, but is there a general rule of thumb as far as if we're doing, let's say, 2,000 square feet, 3 bedroom, 2 bath kind of a deal? How long would it take you to assemble a home like that?
Usually it cuts out about a third of the building time. When
Oh,
you look at the ICF in general, I mean, you've got your vapor barriers on the outside, your sheeting is already done on the outside, your studding or furring is done on the outside, your insulation's already done when you pour that wall. So, I mean, we're talking 5 or 6 contractors that's already taken care of in processes, and just by your ICF guy. And so that part really kind of speeds up the process.
how long does it take when you pour the concrete in the walls? Um, do you have to use any kind of an additive? I don't know much about concrete additives, but I seem to remember they could add stuff that would make it cure faster. Do you use that kind of thing when you pour concrete in an ICF wall?
I don't usually when it gets really cold. They may put a little bit of calcium in the concrete at the first couple of trucks, but typically it's not needed. One of the things about ICF is that the concrete, once you pour it in there, all of the water and heat and additives and everything are maintained within that space. So when they make concrete and send it out to the job, they're based that off of the parameters of you're going to pour your concrete and then you're going to strip the forms off of it in a couple days, if the guys wait that long. And
Yeah.
then for 26 days after that, Mother Nature is going to, add moisture, take moisture away. It's going to get cold. It's going to get hot. It's going to rain, whatever. And after all that aggression to to bare exposed concrete in 28 days, it's going to cure out or core out to what you ordered. Like if you ordered a 3,000 pound mix, it'll have a 3,000 pound crush strength. So when you take that concrete and you basically put it in a cooler and shut the lid, which is like putting it in ICF and all that's retained, it takes it a little longer to cure. But at the 28-day mark, it's what you ordered. At 5 years, it's 50% harder than what you ordered.
Huh.
So it's a pretty cool process.
Well, I did not know that. Learn
Yep.
something new every day.
That's it. And typically we pour a 4,000 to 4,500 pound mix just because it flows better.
Uh-huh.
And so I mean, your walls, for instance, I mean, we poured those at a 4,000 pound mix. So you're looking now at like 6,000, 6,500 pound crush
Good
strength
grief.
on your concrete.
My goodness. One thing that I thought was really cool is that when I was done with my ICF walls at the very top before the trusses were put on, it was recommended to me that I put essentially a wet set bracket down in the concrete, spaced out where the trusses were going to be. And so then when the trusses landed, I could anchor them to the concrete wall. And then there was a strap that went over the tail of the rafter. And
Hmm.
I don't remember, don't quote me on this, but I want to say it provided 180 mile per hour resistance to wind on my roof by doing that.
I'm not surprised at all. There's a truss
So,
company here in town that they make 120-mile-an-hour truss.
mhm.
And they said that once we tie it down to the ICF, it is effectively a 200-mile-an-hour truss.
My
So
goodness.
the house that I'm building right now, we ordered a 150-mile-an-hour truss, and so they're a little beefier anyway. But then
Mhm.
once we anchor those things down, they're not going anywhere. So, and the problem with a lot of lift on your eaves and with your trusses is the walls start racking and moving, and that loosens up those connections. And so
Okay.
with an ICF wall, you've got solid concrete. So those walls of your house don't start racking. You just have the uplift of the wind. And so it does take a lot more to pull your roof off.
If you've got 200 mile per hour winds hitting your house, you've done something wrong, and God is mad because
You might
he's
as well put your
like,
head between your legs and kiss your butt goodbye.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forget what the tornado scale is, an R5 or an R4.
They it used to be classified as an F4.
Okay.
And with the new classifications, they take into account not only the storm size, but also the damage and the amount of
Mhm.
money and so forth. And so it's an old F4, a new EF5 is what
And
ICF will withstand.
so an EF5, which is I guess the highest rating or the most extreme rating, is that
Yeah,
correct?
they call it the finger of God, basically.
What would the mile per hour what would you experience in that type of a tornado, for example, or winds?
You would hope that you would live to tell about it, but it's in
Over.
excess of 300-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, the chances of that happening are extremely slim. So, yeah.
sure. But that
So,
utility bill is going to come in every month, and
yeah,
so is
that's
that
true.
homeowner's insurance. So that's the
Yeah.
stuff we build. If you get over to Oklahoma and um, Southwest Missouri, where they have a lot of tornadic activity,
Hmm.
then we deal with some of that. But a lot more of what we do is more safe room inside the house, or
Oh, sure.
and for protection, and then also storage.
Hmm.
People have valuables and that kind of stuff. We've done everything. We've done underground tunnels. We've done shooting ranges and basements, all kinds of stuff. It's just there's a lot more versatility to this than there is stick frame.
Sure. A shooting range in a basement. Now that sounds interesting. I need to talk
Right?
to that guy. Put me in touch
Yeah.
with him, will you?
I could
So,
introduce you, but then I'd have to kill you. So.
oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, so you've been doing these houses, it's growing every year. Do you do any other kind of work, or is essentially, I thought you did real estate as well.
I do. I got my real estate license back in 2013.
Okay.
So it's a really nice marriage because people come to my office generally with a set of plans or beforehand. And, we'd love to build a house, but we need to sell our house first, or we need to
That makes
buy a
sense.
piece of land, to
Sure.
build on.
Hmm.
And so it gives me an opportunity to work with them and kind of figure out who they are. They figure out who I am. And we build a nice rapport and kind of a friendship prior to building. And so I don't like surprises and I don't like secrets. And so when we go into the building process, it's just a lot more comfortable than just somebody you found on the internet.
Sure. Well, and you can follow them through the whole process, and it's nice on their side because they have one person to contact for everything from start to finish.
Right.
So I can see the benefits to that, both to you and to them.
Hmm. Yeah. No, it's a nice deal. It
Yeah.
really turns out well.
Which do you do more of? Is it more real estate stuff, or is it more building ICF stuff?
I toyed with that when I was looking at getting my license. I was like, how in the world am I going to do two things? Because actually three. Because running a supply company is one,
Uh,
building is another, and then the real estate's a third, and that's a lot. And so But real estate is very much retail. People want to go see houses when they're not working, which is
Yeah.
generally, evenings and weekends and that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
building and supply is very much during the day when people, need supplies and are working and that kind of thing. So it really kind of works out well.
Well, you're a good example of someone who's putting in the grind to make it work and be successful. You've got three irons in the fire, truly an
Yeah,
entrepreneurial spirit. So,
you can't have one anymore. It's like, the world used to be built where, somebody went to work and somebody stayed home to raise the
yeah,
kids and
yep.
and take care of the house and, make sure that everything was kept up and clean and whatever. And anymore, both parents or both people in a relationship, have to work just to make ends meet. And so it's the same with jobs. To have all of your eggs in one basket or your sole income coming from one source is almost impossible anymore.
Yeah, it is. What do you like about your job the most? And I know that you've got multiple irons in the fire, but it sounds like the ICF probably takes up the bulk of it. Is that a fair statement?
It does. I mean, there's when I'm with a client and we're looking at houses, that is time consuming because you're doing the research on the houses and you're taking them to view houses and tour them and then after that's done, there's some paperwork and then there's some babysitting of title companies and inspectors and that kind of stuff, but it's a little more hands off.
Hmm.
Um, the supply is kind of the same way. Um, but the building side of it is, that's more of a, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, depending on the weather, sometimes weekends kind of thing. So
Yeah. What do you dislike the most about your job?
anytime when you're an employee, you work for a boss. And if the boss wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, you could lose your job today, tomorrow. Anytime the phone rings could be your last second at that job. And when you're an entrepreneur or in business for yourself, you don't have that boss, but life is your boss.
Yeah.
So it's not so much as like I woke up today and I went to work and I got fired and I had to come home. Um, there's a lot more monitoring because you have to be able to identify a downhill trend and stop the bleeding before you just end up in absolute turmoil and debt
Hmm.
and whatever at the end of it. But there's some flexibility there of a cool down period, so
Hmm.
to speak. If you know something, if you have enough foresight to see it coming,
Right.
then that's kind of there. But I think what I would probably enjoy the most, I'm a C personality. I like the nuts and bolts and that kind of stuff. So that the building side really appeals to me.
Hmm.
But people, I really love people. I
Hmm.
like working with people and I have a lot of fun with them.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the like and the dislike of the two, I think.
Well, being an entrepreneur, which you certainly are, you have all of the freedom that comes along with. I get to make all the decisions. I get to decide what the priorities are and arrange things how I want it and
Hmm.
dabble as much as I want. But at the end of the day, all of the responsibility to be successful is in your lap. So,
Oh, absolutely. And there are days when I would trade that to be an employee because I
yeah,
can I can I can stop work, I can clock out at 5 o'clock on Friday, and I can go home and forget about it
yeah.
until Monday morning. And you do not have that luxury as an entrepreneur. It is yours. It is your baby. It is on your mind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, rain, shine, holidays,
Mhm.
vacations. It doesn't matter.
The nice thing about that, though, is when you're successful and you've been successful, then you know I'm successful because I busted my butt for years. I put in the work. I had
Sure.
long days, I had weekends, I had nights, and now I'm successful because of all of my hard work. And so you you can look at yourself in the mirror and know that the person responsible for your success is who's looking back at you.
Right. Yeah, and
So,
there's some solace in that. There's some pride
mhm.
that comes into that. You got to be too careful, or you have to be really careful that you don't get a little too caught up into that,
Yeah.
because that pride comes before a fall,
Oh, sure.
and so you got to be careful about how much you look at that. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right. When at the end of the day, it's great to see a project. come to fruition that is either on budget or under budget, and you've got happy people and you
Yeah.
got a little money in the bank, and everything works out.
What kind of soft skills, if someone was wanting to follow in your footsteps and start learning about ICF and how to build with it and all the pros that come with that, what kind of person does well in your line of work?
Um, Obviously, my kind of it's kind of a twofold question. So, if you're going to go into being an ICF contractor or installer, you can just go to work for somebody and gain some building experience. If you
Okay.
want to take some construction trade classes in like your local community college, where you want some background, and pay a little money, that's okay.
Hmm.
At least you're not leaving, after 6 or 8 years with $250,000 in student loan
Yeah.
debt.
Right.
But those kind of basic skills, how to read a tape measure, how to run a saw and a drill, and that kind of stuff is pretty imperative, pretty important. It doesn't take a whole lot of overhead to get into. Um, on the business side of it, that's a lot more intense.
Hmm.
The School of Hard Knocks is the best school in the world, but it's also one of the most expensive. So,
Sure.
um, going through some type of business class, some type of accounting class, having interpersonal skills, being able to communicate with people, um, having manners. It's a trivial little thing, but
Yeah.
it is huge how people's attitudes change when you know how to say please and thank you, and you're not just full of yourself
Right.
and that kind of thing. So those things are pretty important
Hmm.
on either side of it. But yeah, if you're going to do just the construction side, then just the basic tools and some know how, some handyman know how works really well.
It seems like if you did get a job with someone just swinging a hammer or doing roofing or something along those lines, I mean, that's probably the best way to learn is by doing it if that's an option. For me, I learn by you can tell me how to do it 10 times, but until you show me and
Yep.
I do it a couple of times, it doesn't click.
Yep.
So, I'm not everybody's that way, but
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I'm a very visual type person.
yeah,
And so
right.
I said, you can tell me, but I want to watch you do it and then let me do it. And then I got
Sure.
it.
Right. You mentioned a minute ago about going to a class for a community college. I know that a lot of the trade schools have different types of construction and HVAC and welding and mechanical and all that type of stuff. But in the building courses, do they do much as far as ICF construction, or is it still considered just kind of like a fringe type thing? It blows my mind that it's not more common than,
It is. It's a fringe type thing. It's one of those things that overall ICF is only 5% of the building industry.
hmm,
Now, come to find out, the forestry industry is the hand that feeds even the National Home Builders Association's pockets. So
ah,
some of that is you don't bite the hand that feeds you. But other than that, it's a building out a stick frame is just something we've done for hundreds of years. If it ain't broke,
yeah,
don't fix it.
right,
And people just don't realize how broke it is.
right,
So that's a big part of it. So the ICF part is not something that you're going to pick up in those trade schools unless it's just one day or two where your professor, you know, asks somebody like me to come in and present that day or
yep,
show you the ins or outs or whatever. But most of what you're going to learn there is your typical hammer swinging, nail gun, how to run a saw,
yeah.
you know, how to walk away from the job with all your fingers, that kind of thing.
That's important stuff. You know,
It
you
is.
really should reach out to community colleges or trade schools and offer to go in and speak with them. I bet you somebody would take you up on that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've
Yeah,
done it for a couple of the colleges around, just not as much on a regular basis. Sometimes I get busy and forget about some of that reach out stuff that I should be doing.
yeah. What did you have somebody that was your mentor? I know your dad and your brother, you worked with them and you probably learned a lot by watching and doing. But was there anybody in your industry, maybe in the ICF side of things, that you kind of took you under your wing or someone that you admired and learned a lot from?
No, really, there wasn't. I mean, I've been a kind of, when I pick up a new product, I'm a very hands off kind of person. I don't need a salesperson in my office every week or once a month. I just need you to pick up the phone when I call because it's going to be important. I don't call
Yeah.
over little trivial stuff.
Hmm.
So it was just like, hey, give me the books. Let me take the classes. and we're just going to learn this stuff, and then we're going to just run with it. And that's what we did.
Oh, good. What's your best advice for someone that is looking to get into any of the careers that you currently have when you deal with
Run.
failure? Yeah.
No,
Well, yeah,
no.
failure, it's part of it. We all, even the most successful people, I mean, Elon Musk has failed, but now he's worth, I don't know how many hundreds of billions of dollars. So
Oh,
it's,
absolutely. And
it's
I
part of it.
can't I can't remember what the stat was, but they say everybody who is a multimillionaire has filed bankruptcy like 4, 5, 6, 7 times, whatever it is. So you just kind of fail your way to success.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, I mean, there is less people getting into the trades because there's more money to be made online now than there ever has been,
Yeah.
and that's not going anywhere. But
Mhm.
you have, even whatever you're selling online, that money has to come from somewhere, and it whoever made it was doing something. And so we can't all sell online, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and everybody needs a roof over their head.
Mhm.
And so the trades, if you get into building, if you get into electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all of those are community college type programs that you can do in 2 to 4 years. With HVAC and electrical and plumbing, they have apprenticeship programs when you go to work for somebody, and then you become a novice, and then finally you're a master electrician or a master plumber. But those guys, you can make as much as a doctor or more.
I've paid them, so I know what they
Absolutely,
charge.
we all have, right?
Yeah, yeah. But,
And
even, I mean, I'm going to cut costs on a lot of things when the economy is tight or money is tight, but I still want my plumbing to work. I still want my lights to come on. I mean, there's certain things you just have to have. So,
yeah, yep, and that's the thing. The ICF industry, like I said, it's only 5% of the building industry, so that's a really small piece of the pie.
mhm,
And so it takes a lot to make enough, sales or whatever to make a good living there.
mhm,
I was just speaking to an HVAC contractor the other day who had built and sold his HVAC company, and he told me we were talking about those stats, and he said, 87% of the United States has of the middle class have some type of heating and air. And if it's 87% of the middle class, then 100% of the upper class.
yeah,
And it was something stupid, like 70% even of the lower class. So he had really picked out a niche that everybody needs.
mm,
And it was super smart. And he sold his company for millions and millions of dollars.
good
And
grief.
but those kind of considerations are, you know,
Yeah,
way better than because even if you think about it, even doctors and lawyers and those guys, they still work for somebody. They either work for a major hospital and can get fired at a heartbeat, or they work for themselves. But if they get hurt, they're self-employed. If they get hurt and don't go to work, there's no money to be made.
right.
If I get hurt tomorrow, I've got subs doing the work on the job, so I can still manage and make money.
Mhm. Well, and you've still got your real estate side of things where you
Yep,
could do that while your shoulder heals or something along those lines.
exactly.
So, but you got into ICF. You said it's only 5%, but you got into that pretty early on in the industry. So you've established yourself now. So you're, I mean, your name is probably out there on anybody looking to build ICF.
Oh,
So
sure. Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. If you get on Google and look up my area, I'm one of the first ones that come up, and nobody has as much experience with ICF as I do in this area. Not that I'm tooting my own horn there. It's
Hmm.
just fact. I mean, we've had ICF now for 20 years, and none of my competitors even come remotely close to that.
Nice. Is your product an American made product?
It is. It's made in Ohio,
Oh, good.
manufactured there. They've got a couple different plants in Idaho and Ohio, and I think one on the East Coast somewhere as well.
So they ship it down in a semi truck to a warehouse that you have, I assume. Is that how you store the product?
Yep. Yep. I usually keep a couple truckloads in stock. Fortunately, though, I can also direct ship. So if a
Oh,
project is big enough, then we just ship it directly from manufacturer to job site, and either they unload it or we show up and unload it for them.
I would imagine the truck drivers get pretty good fuel economy when they're just delivering a truckload of foam blocks.
Yeah. When you have a what is it, 73-foot truck or whatever it is,
Mhm.
that's carrying 10,000 pounds, it gets way better gas mileage and goes way faster than carrying that 80,000 pound fruit load or whatever it is.
Sure. Huh. So let's shift gears here. The pay, you talked about how an HVAC guy or whatever could make, if he wants to work hard and grow his company, he could make what a
Sure.
doctor would make for a fraction of um, the school loans and the schooling that would be needed.
Hmm.
Real estate, that's one of those things where the sky's the limit to a certain degree.
Sure.
Um, what types, if someone that builds, what's the where would someone expect if they were just getting into starting their own building company? What kind of income can they expect, or is there even? It just all depends on what you put into it.
Pretty much, and what systems you have in place. Obviously, the more you are able to do and capable of doing, the more you're going to make on the project. If you are just a contractor that subs everything out, well,
Hmm.
then there's a lot of money flying through your company, but that's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to fly right through you
Okay.
because you're paying all the subs for everything. So there's a certain part of our building process that we do ourselves. Um, and we have an installation company that's tied to the not tied to, it's separated, but still in conjunction with the supply company.
Hmm.
And so there's a certain part of that we take on and we do, and then we sub out the
Hmm.
stuff that we don't know how to do or don't want to do, like electrical
Sure.
and plumbing and roofing.
The plumbing and the electrical is probably two areas where it's just best to let the experts handle that.
Yep,
Like,
that's the one. I
yep.
don't like getting shocked, and plumbing is
No.
just a crappy job.
Right. So if you weren't doing your current career, if you could go back to 15-year-old Ray and he's got, big dreams and he's going to be a rock star, or he's going to be, I don't know what you wanted to do, but what other career would, if you ever look and think, well, what would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? What do you think it would be?
I always said if I didn't, of course, we've always been in the supply type company, and we've
Yeah.
always had big, heavy products that we could only deliver within a couple hour radius.
Mm.
And I said if I had to do it all over again on that side, I would pick a product that weighed less than 5 pounds that I could ship all over the world.
Ah.
Just because right now I'm dealing with we're a decent size area, but I have to take a pretty big chunk of the pie to make a good living.
Mm.
And if you have something small that I don't know how many people there are in the U.S. right now, 300 million or something like that.
Hmm.
But if you have something small that a majority of those people, or even a minority of those people need, how many of 300 million do you need to sell to make a dang good living?
Right.
So that's probably what I would do, just because all you need is a sliver of the big pie instead of a big piece of a little pie.
Right. The riches are in the niches, I think is I mean, I know it's not pronounced niches, but it rhymes better. I heard it said that way. So,
Yes,
um,
it does. And anybody that says niche is just off the
they're
rocker.
just a fancy
But
pants.
that's
Yeah.
right. They drink tea with their pinkies up.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Right. So, what's the best compliment that you have ever received?
Oh, I love this was the best experience we've ever had kind of thing, whether it comes from real estate or building or whatever, because everybody's got horror stories from their
Hmm.
realtor or their builder that never communicated and only gave them bills and they were over budget and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And so we just try to, whenever I do a project, I just try to take those things in mind because I've been on the receiving end of some of that too.
Hmm.
So I just try to keep that stuff in mind and treat people the way I would want to be treated. And every house that I build is like I build it like I would be building my own. And which, is a little more stressful. I get it, but I just like happy people.
Yeah. Well, who doesn't? I mean, there's so many sticks in the mud out there anymore that if you're a genuinely happy person, I think you just are a magnet for other people. So,
Pretty much either that or they just think you're an oddball for being happy all the time.
well, that's their problem.
That's right. That's one of those you problems.
Yeah. Is there
Yep.
somebody in the public eye that you admire or that you kind of model maybe some aspects of your business?
I Not anybody specific. I've always been kind of a student of businessmen. I like how they carry themselves, their thirst for knowledge
Mhm.
and just how they conduct their business. I'm kind of a student of that, and so the guys that the Robert Kiyosaki's of the world, um, he's done multi. He started out with rental properties and then did multifamily and apartment buildings and his residential, rental portfolio is absolutely insane. Um, Trump is another one that I studied when in his business of commercial
Mhm.
real estate and
Yeah.
his rent, his portfolio of commercial real estate and how he built that, even from his dad, was really cool.
Mhm.
Um, Aside from everything else, just that side of his
Yeah.
business.
Putting the
Um,
politics aside, he's a pretty successful businessman.
yeah, after all, people like Elon Musk is the same deal. It's like
Mhm.
how'd you get there? How'd you do that? And those kind of guys I like to read about the billionaires of the world and kind of see how they got there. And I
Right.
really admire those that didn't get where they are by stomping on other people.
Sure.
And so that's the kind of guys I try to emulate in my
Yeah.
business.
Sure. A lot of those guys, you hear the stories, and when I ask this question, Elon Musk pops up a lot, and he's extremely successful, of course, and Warren Buffett and folks like that. But
Sure.
Elon Musk was one of those guys who slept under his desk and he worked 125 hours a week, and he did that for years. And he had people around him that would do the same thing. It's just a different breed of drive. I mean, we all have the ability to do it. Some people, though, they get joy and satisfaction out of working constantly like that. I'm
Right.
not one that's built that way. I certainly would like my downtime, and but I'm not worth $45 billion either. So,
Right. Yeah, but do you even need to be? And I think that's where these guys get a little in the trenches,
yeah,
is that you don't need $45 billion to be successful. I mean, the guy that dies with all the money still dies.
yeah,
So and we only have a very limited time, on
mhm,
this earth. So, and be able to enjoy what you can. And you
yeah,
don't have to be a workaholic to do that. You've got to have enough gumption to get out of bed and go to work,
yeah,
but you don't need to just sell your soul to
right.
work to be able to do some of that stuff. So
I don't
some
need
of
$45 billion, but I sure would like to know if I need it or not for real.
that that's it. Yep. Yep, that's the one. A lot of these guys they have all that, and then not only do they not know what to do with it, but trying to keep it. You never know who your friends are. You never
Oh
know
yeah,
who's going to try to rob you
right.
or whatever. And that part of it, we're seeing that a lot more now in pop stars
Yeah,
this year, especially. It's really come out. There's even a couple lady pop stars right now that are like, look, if they don't knock this off, I'm just quitting,
yeah,
because you've got all that, but who wants it?
yeah. It's a mess. The the potential. What's the future of ICF? Like, where do you see this market going, and then what other types of things might complement someone who sells ICF? Is there an ancillary industry that you might go, I should probably get into that, or maybe that's
Right? No,
a pair
I'm
up or
still
down.
looking. I'm always looking.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, it's I think ICF is only going to get stronger
Yeah.
as time moves on. Used to be you could build out a 2x4 construction on the exterior of the house, and then as building codes increased over the years from 2015 to 2018 building codes, it's almost necessary that at minimum be 2x6 now,
Mm,
and that's just going to continue to get bigger as energy efficiency and disaster resistance and that kind of stuff becomes more prevalent and more in demand. And
hmm.
so every time they do that, it's like, well, ICF was already there.
Right.
I don't care if you're framing out of 2x12s. ICF is already there. We're already stronger. We're already more fire resistant. We're already more storm resistant. So it's just going to get better. The more educated people get, and the more demand there is for better homes. I mean, a stick built house is pretty much like a 150-year throwaway home. At 20 years, you're like, what is going to go wrong? Because everything's fixing to break.
Yeah.
And yet in Europe, they're selling these stone houses that are 200 years old, and that'll happen here eventually. But
I thought of a question just now, and I don't think I asked you this. What does a typical wood structure, and let's say that it's a quality stick build, like a 2x6 with a high R value insulation, spray foam, for example. I know that's one that a lot of people like to use. How
sure.
does that compare in the R value, which is a very common rating people like to use, to the R value of an ICF wall?
Sure. 2x6 and spray foam is an R32 that performs at about a 26.
Okay.
ICF is an R24 as it sits flat, empty on the floor, and it performs once you get the concrete in the house built. It performs at over 50 because there's no heat that transfers through it in the day. And that's the
Okay.
way R value is measured. They put a heat lamp on one side and measure how much comes through on the other, and that's your R value. Well, there is no transfer. And so it performs way higher.
Hmm.
And so even the 2x6 and spray foam, it's almost double.
Do you have any benefit with the concrete? You said 6 inch earlier in our interview. 6 inch was the most common um, thickness of concrete for a residential structure. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
typically.
What type of, with that mass, do you have any benefit there with it retaining heat or retaining cool, like in the middle of the summertime with air conditioning?
No, it really what it amounts to is whatever your temperature is inside is never going to reach outside to get out
Okay.
of the house. And whatever temperature it is outside in a 24-hour period is not going to reach inside to change the temperature. And that's why the R value is so high in an ICF house. But the concrete itself is just considered thermal mass and has no R value.
Okay. But so you said in a 24-hour period, so you're not going to have these drastic or constant temperature fluctuations of 30 minutes later it's dropped 4 degrees or it's gotten 4 degrees higher or whatever. It's going to stay pretty consistent over longer periods of time.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we went in ice storms that we had. Let's see, we had one here in 2007, a big one.
Mm.
One of our clients lives in a big house, big ICF house, and him and I can't remember how many kids they had, 8 or 10, and they were in the basement, and they would monitor, how many times the kids went out the door and that kind of stuff. But in the week and a half that they lost electricity, they said they lost 12 degrees in the house.
Huh.
And I mean, that was during the dead of winter, ice storm. Average temperatures were, single digits and low teens kind of thing. So that was pretty impressive.
That is impressive. Hmm. Well, I got to tell you, Ray, I live in an ICF house, so I was pretty familiar with it, but I still learned an awful lot by talking with you, not only about ICF, but just about the industry and about what your job is like and what it's like to be an entrepreneur. So I want to thank you for taking the time, 55 minutes almost, out of your day to speak with, little old me. So
Absolutely. No, it was a pleasure. It's always fun to talk about this stuff and about business in general. And
yeah,
and then of course when we dial it down into the niches that we all have, it's kind of cool to learn new things. And even after 20 years of dealing with this stuff, I mean, you always learn something new.
sure.
And if you're not, you're going backwards or something wrong.
Yeah.
So
Well, you're
it's
never
always a
too old to
pleasure to
learn.
talk about this stuff. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that wraps up another episode of the Jobs Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully you found that interesting. As always, I wait until the end of an interview to ask you to like, subscribe, and share. I feel it's important that I earn that support from you. Thanks again, and we will see you on the next one.